on Ottawa Today. We're joined now by former Canadian Olympian, a guy who played internationally for Canada at both the Olympics and the World Cup and was a soccer coach as well. Now he says he is homeless and destitute, and he's recorded an open letter to the Prime Minister about his situation. Paul James, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Mark. Pleasure to be here.
And you, of course, were in Ottawa. You were the coach of the Ottawa Intrepid, right?
Oh, I loved it. It was absolutely a superb experience, so I'll never forget that. And I used to run around the canal as well.
Okay. We were just talking about the canal a few minutes ago. Now,
Right.
Tell me what happened? How did you end up in this situation?
Well, I think it's well documented that I've suffered from a bona fide mental disability in terms of substance use disorder for 15 years. And when I sought help and support in 2008, it was I got discriminated against, prejudiced, and in the end, within 12 months, I lost both my employment work, which was to master soccer coach at York University, and also a part-time media soccer analyst work for Gold TV. And since that moment, so because we don't have a lot of time, I just encapsulate it for you. But in eight years since, I've nosedived in terms of every facet of my life. But it's not because of the mental health issues. It's because of the societal approach and the stigmatization that people like myself that are come open actually face. And the frightening thing is that it's not just me. If you do your research, you'll find that in one study that I looked at, that now has been taken off the internet, but it was through the Metro Hall in Toronto, was that there's 90% of people that have a substance use disorder or substance addiction that go on that treatment roundabout. 5 years later, in every facet of their life, they're worse off. I think the profile, my soccer profile, is the nature of the beast. In one side it helps, and the other side it doesn't help. It helps now, let's say, because raising awareness of what I'm fighting for, which is justice, and justice not just for myself, but for everybody else, including Canadian society, because we have a $51 billion economic burden per year on untreated mental health, including substance addictions, in fact, a large portion of substance addictions. So I say to you and anybody listening here, well then, how on earth are we going to penetrate that if in logical terms that we have to encourage to penetrate that, we have to get people to seek treatment? Well, how on earth are we going to do that? Because people like myself, when I was at York University, I was in such distress. I'd reach that chronic period of substance use. You know, there's a progressive. It doesn't just happen. You could become an addict straight away, or a substance dependent person. It happens progressively, and you should get treatment as soon as you possibly can, but you don't because you're self-stigmatized because of the fear of what's going to happen.
Yeah.
I come open, that's what happens. And I went through the judicial system. It's interesting, Christine, because I did listen to your previous guest, and she was saying about the justice system. It's been a horrific experience over 5 years.
Now, was your treatment, the treatment you've gotten, has it helped you? Are you clean now?
Well, I'm glad you raised that. Do you mean, am I healthy? Because there's a big difference.
Right. Yeah, and I guess it's
Well, let's
those are two different things. So let's address both of them. Are you have had it?
I'm healthy, and for 2.5 years, let's say, I would be healthy, meaning that I'm not in a chronic position where I could not be functional.
Right.
Now, prior to that, it was always about looking to seek employment. So the issue is when we use it, like to be clean, what do you mean by being clean? And that would be one of the things I would say to the government in terms of doing an investigation on what this is all about. Because clean as opposed to what? As opposed to dirty. So what our ideology is, because we have a criminal mindset, is criminalized to be a substance user of a number of drugs. So what we do is it's a punitive approach as opposed to a supportive approach. And when somebody says, are you clean? That to me says you're not considering this a medical condition. You're considering this a bad behavior. You're considering it more of a criminal element. Because to be clean, what our system is that we take a dirty drug addict, a pejorative dirty drug addict, we throw them in what we call a washing machine called a rehab. And in that rehab, you come out and you're supposed to be clean. And if you're not clean, I'm assuming, and this is where we get into the human rights and discrimination area, is that if you're not clean, you can't work. Well, what comes first, the chicken or the egg? The work or the as we say, cleanliness.
Right.
So I don't buy into that.
Yeah.
I buy into, are you healthy? Because what happened at York University is that I became in a period during that where I was unhealthy and I needed help and support, and it failed me as it fails millions of other Canadians across the country, and that's for sure. And that's why so many people don't come forward and are terrified and suffering behind closed doors. And unfortunately, I'm in a position where I see the only option for me after taking a discrimination claim to the Supreme Court as a self-represented applicant. I mean, this is for other people's consciousness, not mine. I am of sound mind. I don't need to go to rehab. I don't need to speak to a counselor. But you tell me, Prime Minister Trudeau, or anybody else, when you look at my background, when you look at, I haven't harmed anybody, what are my options? And I don't have any. I get treated so poorly out in the community. I don't accept that. The Canadian Soccer Association, can you imagine this, Mark? I haven't received a call from them since I left there in 2001.
So I want to make sure I understand this clearly, and that is, you're saying you're in a position now where you're healthy enough to work, but nobody will hire you in soccer because of what you've been through.
Right, and particularly at the level that I on a Thursday I go up and to Oshawa. I go all the way to Oshawa, and I do a coaching session for 3 teams. But in terms of my background, in terms of what I have to go get a full-time job, and we have to begin to understand, like, this is so layered that in 10 minutes we're not going to be able to cover it. But let's just say you become self-stigmatized because you don't. It's like racism. If you look at Jane Elliott and there's a BBC on YouTube about what in 2011, she went over to England to see has racism improved. Well, she highlighted some really interesting factors that no, it hasn't in England. It's improved to a certain point, but then it's still the same. And it's just, well, we're not even scratching the surface of the self-stigma that you receive from somebody. And what happens is that when somebody calls you a crackhead, or you go and you don't get a job with no email in response, you don't want to feel that pain anymore. Like you end up retreating.
So, and I'm only jumping in because we are short on time, as you've alluded to. What is it that you want to see happen? What is your request to the Prime Minister?
Well, I wanted this is not just a personal cause anymore. I want justice for myself, so that it takes justice for everybody else that's in this situation. Because you know, when you talk about what should the government be investing in, well, if you go back to 2010 and Monique Beijing, who did a report and highlighted that we're the biggest spenders in healthcare, one of the biggest spenders. We are one of the worst in terms of the social safety net and how we take care of our citizens, and particularly on a mental health level. In 2004, you had the Kirby report that turned around and said the economic burden is enormous on teenage suicides, on mental health and addictions, and governments need to take it seriously. Well, 10 years later, I'm a litmus test for the disaster that it is, and it's going to get worse. Ariana Huffington, who's gone up and set up her new organization, is all about it. She gets it. There's an undercurrent, and Bell Canada, for all what they do, if you don't align your justice system, in my situation with York University, if you don't align your justice system, that when somebody discriminates against you, because when I need the government to do an investigation of the Paul James story through the judicial system. It is disgraceful. It is overwhelming that I was discriminated against, and they need to be held accountable, and then everything else should fall into place, meaning that if somebody is under distress, mental health distress, and particularly with substance addictions, they cannot be ostracized, they cannot be discriminated against if we want to begin to penetrate the $51 billion. And I'm telling you, Kevin O'Leary and Donald Trump, they might be staunch conservatives and might have a war on drugs policy, but all they need to have is to be educated on what this is all about, what it truly is all about, because we're illiterate as a society on how to deal with people like myself.
Yeah.
But when they see the dollars and cents and see, well, if we can encourage and make this system better that will penetrate the $51 billion, they're going to change their attitude.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. There is such a strong economic argument for us investing in solutions for mental illness and addiction. I really appreciate you sharing your story, and I wish you the best of luck. We'll check in with you again, okay?
Brilliant, Mark. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Paul James, former coach of the Ottawa Intrepid, who also represented Canada as a player and coach internationally.